Welcome back to the Quick Save Podcast. My name is Alex.
I'm Josh.
And today, we are finally entering into the cold embrace of UMDecember, a month that we celebrate to talk about the PlayStation Portable.
More like the porn station portable.
In all its glory, yeah! Woo.
I had a buddy growing up, he would very clearly download pornography and watch it on his PSP on the bus.
You want to give your buddy a name?
His name was Buckaroo Banzai, and he went across the fifth dimension with his porn station portable.
That sounds like someone who would download porn on a bus.
Well, no comment, I guess.
We're going to be going over 4 major PSP titles. Some that you may very well know, some that might be interesting.
Some that make the console good, some that make the console weird.
Today, we're going to be going over one of the poster children for the PSP, Ratchet and Clank Size Matters.
Probably one of the most advertised games on the PSP. It was pushed heavily for sure.
I mean,
I think they sold a bundle that came with it, right?
Yeah, there's a bundle that came with it. I'm trying to think of other poster children for the PSP that people know of. Daxter was definitely one of them.
Playing another one, Patapon, was very heavily pushed, I felt like.
There's just a ton. So I mean, there's Ratchet and Clank Size Matters, Daxter, Patapon, Killzone was huge because it's a PlayStation property.
And it put 4 SOCOMs on the thing, right?
Yeah, so SOCOM was huge also on the PSP.
Fire Team Bravo.
Ace Combat's, weirdly enough, was a major part of PSP history.
Vice City was on the system. There's a couple GTAs.
Yep. It's crazy how much there is. But Ratchet and Clank are your standard PlayStation duo, I would say. Yeah, it's kind of what we came to know for PlayStation, right? For platformers.
So this is the point kind of where Crash has left the building. Crash Bandicoot, he's no longer a PlayStation exclusive property. He kind of swapped over to Xbox 360.
Yeah, Naughty Dog's doing some stuff.
Yeah, he swapped over to 360 for a little while. Spyro kind of has his own thing going on at this point. He had some Nintendo properties, Game Boy Advance games. He had his own kind of handheld journey. So Ratchet & Clank is kind of the first big PlayStation-like mascot, if you will, to come to the system.
And their lineage very much shows that.
Yep. We'll talk more about the game and how it runs and stuff, but this game is, again, for lack of a better term, pushed hard. They were like, play this and you'll understand the power of the PlayStation Portable.
So let's talk a little bit about the plot.
Please. Ratchet & Clank, hey, great news. They go on all these adventures. Woof, don't you think they need a day off? Well, great news. This game, Size Matters. They're on vacation.
Ooh, finally. Those guys have been putting in some work.
They're on Poketaru. Very big destination.
If you play Ratchet & Clank, you very much know what that is.
Poketaru's in most of the games, yep. So they're on vacation in Poketaru, and they get sucked into a big galactic adventure in which the mythical race of Technomites threaten the entire galaxy, but mainly just Ratchet & Clank, like usual. So
that's how it goes.
Yep. Quark is there. All your favorites.
Oh, Quark. What?
Guys, can't I come along on your cool space adventure?
Quark the hero, Quark the bad guy, Quark the please go home.
Yep. I haven't played this game. I had this when I was a child. I literally called the part in the cutscene where Clank did he goes, ee. And I was like...
Little Scooby-Doo laugh.
He told a joke, and then I did the laugh, and he did the laugh at the same time. I was like, I haven't played this game in 20 years, and I still absolutely knew exactly what was going to happen in the cutscene.
Ratchet & Clank's one of those series that just sits with you. I vividly remember playing through, the first big 4 of the titles.
Yep.
100%. I could probably go back and still know what to do, where to find stuff, and all that jazz.
Yeah, Up Your Arsenal was always my favorite until I got Deadlocked later on.
Deadlock. I know a lot of people are like, that's not the greatest one.
Deadlock is great.
I love Deadlock.
I love the combat of Deadlock is probably the best from the PS2 era.
I get it, the story in Deadlock isn't the greatest, but that game is so good.
I think that game is just so much fun. For a side story, I think that game is a ton of fun.
Yeah.
And then you have the great announcement. See, we're not going to spend a million hours on this because I want to play Deadlocked on the show eventually. But what really sells Deadlocked for me is the announcers throughout the whole thing.
Yes!
Where you have Juanita, the robot, and then you have, I forget the other guy's name, but he goes, oh, that one looked like it's staying, Juanita.
The announcers are so good.
She's like, I wish you would die. And you're like, fuck yeah, man. What a game, man.
I wish you would die too.
Yep.
Pricing-wise, it's surprising how well this game has stood up. I mean,
well, they printed again. They pushed this game hard. They made 1 billion trillion copies for the PSP. It was a very everybody. If you had a PSP, chances are pretty likely you probably had Size Matters.
Yeah, it's not a difficult copy by any means to get your hands on, but it's odd how well the pricing stands up. So on the PSP, loose $7.52. Pretty I would say a standard price for any PlayStation Portable game. Complete $11.32.
That's not bad.
That's saying right in I would say the middle of the low end for PlayStation games. That's what you expect for a title, I would say. It's about $11.
Really? That's what you think? I would think higher than that. I would think if in this day and age you want to be a PSP game, I'd probably say $20.
Really? Granted, I got a lot of my collection very early on.
Yeah.
I've always been a big PlayStation Portable guy. I like my handhelds a lot.
And then you have a ton of RPG. I mean, there's a lot of things that are expensive on this system.
I have some expensive games for the system.
Yep. But I think, I would say probably 10 to 20 is probably right in the range if you're looking to buy a standard, large release AAA PSP game.
Once again, there's been millions of copies thrown out into the the ecosystem of the secondhand market. $11 for this game. That's kind of crazy. I would have for how much this thing has been printed, I would have honestly have guessed around $5. This is one of those games that there's just so many copies of.
Well, take me to the next price, why don't you?
Well, the next price, people are wondering, what do you mean the next price?
This is a PSP game.
Yeah.
What else could it have been put on?
It was ported to the PS2.
Correct.
Because it's a Ratchet and Clank game.
I mentioned this later. I don't know if this is true or not. Might be one of the only games that had a PSP release first and then afterwards came to the PS2.
Anyways, you want to get on PS2. Loose, $14.21.
A loose copy on PS2 is more expensive than a complete version on the PSP.
If you want a complete PS2 copy, you're looking at $21.53.
Almost twice the price of a complete PSP copy.
It's wild.
So you're like, it's cheap, it's cheap, it's cheap. Well, for all the people who want to not play it on their PSP and want to play it on their home console, it is not cheap. It is twice as expensive if you want it for your home console.
I would say for a lot of people that are trying to collect in bulk, I would say, or just on a larger scale, $20, you're it goes from $10 a game to I'll buy 5, 6 of these. $20 a game, you're looking I'll buy 1 or 2.
Yeah, I'll buy 2, yeah.
At most. It's crazy. The reviews are all scattered for this too. It really was kind of weird. Because you look at the major reviews, right?
Well, so it's hard, right? Because it's what do we have to compare this to other than the PS2 games, right?
Yeah.
So it's if you're being well, compared to the PS2 games, this sucks. Well,
duh.
Duh, right? Obviously, that makes sense. But then when you look at it as just a standalone PSP game, right? If this had been the first Ratchet and Clank game that came out, people would be like, holy crap, this game's freaking amazing, right?
I mean, here's the thing. I was looking up reviews on this. You kind of PSP version got roughly 8 out of 10 on almost every site. The PS2 version got a 6 out of 10 for showing more flaws of the game.
Right. The graphics are obviously dumbed down because it's a PSP and not a PS2. So then when you put it on the big screen, you're like, wow, this looks like crap. Yeah, because it was a PSP game.
Yeah. It's just kind of they got so nitpicky because it's Ratchet and Clank. You want it to be the best of the Ratchet and Clank.
Well, it's not as good as the made for PS2 versions. Of course, it's not going to be.
It's a port. I mean, that's half the battle right there. Is just making it look nice from a port standpoint. But even the PSP one, there were some of the PSP reviews that were just this sucks, and other people are this is great. And you're I can't tell which way's up and down.
I mean,
these reviews.
If I were to give a review, I'd probably call it a 7 or 8 out of 10, saying for what it is, it's good.
Yeah, it's your standard Ratchet and Clank game, and that's that's not being mean or anything. That's good. You want a standard Ratchet and Clank game.
It's like Super Mario All-Stars, where it's just if you played Mario on the NES and then you played Mario on the Super Nintendo, you're why would I want to play this? It's the same game, right? It's but for some people, that's the point, right? It's yes, I want the same game, but on my new console or on my handheld console in this case. That's the draw, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But
my favorite review, though, this is my favorite review. The PlayStation official magazine for the US side gave the PS2 version a 4 out of 10. They're this sucks.
This sucks. Our own game for our system sucks.
Here's the deal. This is curiously a standard Ratchet and Clank game,
Controls like Ratchet and Clank.
It controls, plays, looks.
Quacks like Ratchet and Clank. It looks like Ratchet and Clank. It smells like Ratchet and Clank. I think this one's Ratchet and Clank.
And, like, I went in on this going, like, okay, it's a Ratchet and Clank game, but it's on the PSP, right? You're going to have, like, maybe some really wonky controls, or maybe you're going to have, like, some weird new aspect that they're trying to put in, right? Because the PSP had a camera. The PSP had all these weird kind of features and stuff.
Peripherals and,
yeah. And it's just like, nah, we're going to make a standard game. And you're like, this is a standard Ratchet and Clank game. And it's like, not like lower quality. It's not, you know, this weird obscure type of game. It's just a standard Ratchet. And you're just kind of like, what's happening?
It's not like a multiplayer game. It's not like a, you know, it is just straight Ratchet and Clank.
It feels weird. And it's weird to say that, but you're just kind of waiting for something to, like, you're waiting for the ball to drop and it'd be like this crazy, weird other type of game. But the whole time it's just, we're going on another adventure, guys. Come on, let's go for it. And you're like, sure.
Yeah, this game, it's just Ratchet and Clank on the PSP. That's simply the formula. There's no tricks, no gimmicks, no multiplayer required, no online play, no all-for-one connectivity, whatever, right? It's just Ratchet and Clank, period. It doesn't hold up, obviously, if you're comparing it to, like, Up Your Arsenal or Going Commando or
holds up for a PSP game.
Yeah, so it doesn't. If we compare it to the other PS2 games, you compare it to any other Ratchet and Clank game other than, like, the stupid PS3 ones that suck, pales in comparison. But when you compare it to the other PSP games, look, man, feels pretty good for a PSP game, right?
Yeah, smooth, doesn't like jitter.
Yep, it's a fun little romp through Insomniac's world. Yeah, and it's very interesting.
We played this differently than a traditional PSP game. I have the wonderful fun hookups for being able to play this on the large TV. So we were able to, like, sit down and play this on an actual, like, large screen. And graphics wise, like, obviously that kind of deteriorates from, like, putting on a 4x3 screen. But it's still, like, honestly kind of good.
Look, the graphics are simple, but that's the point. Again, it's a PSP. If you're going to play a PSP game, you're like, well, the graphics will look bad. Dude, it's a freaking PSP, man.
It's essentially, a PSP is essentially kind of like a PS1/PS2 operating system on a handheld.
It's like a technical marvel that this thing exists at all, man. Yeah. And you're standing here complaining to me about the graphics? Yeah, I mean, there's like, definitely noticeably at times, there's some jitter, there's some pop in. You'll walk from one room to the next.
And we were looking at the pillars in one area.
Exactly. Right in the beginning of the game, these pillars, like, you take 2 steps forward and they just, like, appear before you, right? So, I mean, obviously it's not the most powerful console. The graphics aren't always going to blow your mind. But, again, for what it is, pretty solid.
Honestly, also take into consideration.
You compare this graphically to, like, the first Ratchet and Clank on PS2, it's, like, not that dissimilar.
You take into consideration, this is also was Sony's first attempt at, like, putting a handheld together, right? Talk about just a leap of faith that they threw out there. But, like, yeah, the graphics are decent. The controls were not different from a regular controller.
I think there's some small things, but
like small things, but it's like nothing huge. And, like, the entire time that we were playing this, I was just like, yeah, this brings me back, man. This brings me back to a time when I would just sit down and play Ratchet and Clank all the time. And, like,
the good old days, we like.
Yeah, the good old days. But, like, I just kind of want to sit down and finish it. Like, yep. I feel like I could probably finish this, honestly, pretty quick.
It's
right?
not that long, and then there's, like, a new game plus that makes it harder. But yeah, so what I really like about this game is they add the concept of armors, which is not unique to this game. A lot of the other games have armor, but the armor is different in this game. It's not just something you buy for 1,000,000 bolts and then you just get damage reduction. This, as you explore, there are pieces hidden around levels that you have to collect. And then you get benefits from wearing a full set of matching armor, or then you get benefits from, like, mixing and matching. So if I wear 2 of one set and 2 of another, I'll get, like, a bonus. So I think the first one we get is wildfire armor. And I think, if I remember correctly, when you wear all 4 pieces of wildfire armor, you get, like, fire melee damage. So your melee attacks do a little extra fire damage. And then I think there's, like, the purple ones, like wind armor or whatever, right? And all of them have benefits, but then it's like if you wear half of the red armor and half of the purple armor, you'll get some new benefit. Like you can triple jump or, whatever, right? They all give you these benefits, which I think was a very interesting and kind of like underutilized idea.
You can see a lot of this kind of leading up to Deadlock in ways, because this is kind of like right around the Up Your Arsenal time, and like there's ideas I've seen in this that I'm like, oh yeah, that was like kind of further developed and put into like Deadlock, or I've seen that in like way later in the series, right? Like a Kraken Time, I think, is one of them.
Yep.
All for One, like there's just like random things.
All for One sucks.
Yeah, All for One does suck hard. But I mean, like, there's ideas that they were like, hey, what if this was the thing? And then, like, we still see it show up today. My favorite thing is Clank walking around. There's small Clank. He's just going around doing his thing.
Yeah, the Clank missions are always there. I kind of want to see how the PS2 port compares, right? Like, I know a lot of people are, like, hating on the PS2 port. I always really wanted to play that and see if, like, does it just suck more? Like,
yeah, the PS2 port's so weird, man. There's like a cult following for it, that like people that love it, and there's like a cult hate for it.
It's probably like, if that was the version you played as a kid, like you didn't have a PSP, but your dad bought it for you for your PS2 or something, you were like, yeah, this rules, right? But then if you played it on the PSP, you'd be like, this sucks on the PSP. Whereas a lot of people are the opposite, where you had it for your PSP, you play the PS2 version, you're like, this sucks on the PS2. It's better on the PSP. I wanted to mention, I know I mentioned earlier, but it's wild that this was a PSP game that got ported to PS2. Again, I don't know if there are any other games that did that. I don't think so. But also, like, after the reviews we saw, it would make sense why they didn't do it again. They're like, yeah, people did not like it when we took the crappy PSP game and put it on the PS2.
Looking into some fun facts now, I think this is really gonna shed some light on the whole premise of how this game came to be. This was revealed at the pre-show of E3 in 2006. That's right.
I wonder if there's an E3 code for a lot of the Ratchet and Clank games. They'd reveal them at E3 and then they'd give it a code. And if you had the code, you could get like a skin or a weapon or something, right? So I think for Up Your Arsenal, if you had the E3 code, it would turn your wrench into like a lightsaber.
That's cool.
I'd go around as Ratchet and kill all these like robots with my lightsaber and stuff like that. But a lot of the games had like E3 codes.
Yeah, and like they didn't just show this like at the show. Like they weren't like so gung ho for it. They're like, here's the preview to the show. Yeah, there you go.
Yep.
Just throw it up there. Wapa.
Xbox exclusive world premiere.
Essentially. Another thing is that this took 18 months to develop from scratch.
Yeah, it's to say they had to build the engine and stuff for the PSP, I'm sure. They probably couldn't just like port the stuff, right? I'm sure it was not compatible.
We've talked a lot about like small development groups and stuff, or short periods of time. This is on that list. I think we need to start making a list, honestly, of like the shortest games made, or the shortest amount of time
shortest
a game has been made
times
for games, because like 18 months is crazy. That's literally just a year and 6 months, so a year and a half.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
To pop out a fully blown game.
From the ground up. Yeah.
From the ground up? That's insane.
Yeah, so this was the best-selling PSP game of 2007. Again,
not hard to see why.
Again, makes sense. Literally, like a very pushed title. Sold with consoles. You name it. They said, you love Ratchet and Clank, we're putting them on the PSP.
I think it was on demo discs even. It's just everywhere.
Let's talk a little bit about the studio. It's called High Impact Games, literally born from Insomniac Studios. Insomniac did all the PS2 console Ratchet and Clank games and still does.
The development group was made up of like former Insomnia employees.
Yeah, so Insomniac employees, left to form this group, High Impact Games, which is, it's interesting. It's not, kept it in the family, right?
It also explains why it plays like a Ratchet and Clank game.
Yeah, these people knew how to build a Ratchet and Clank game. Let's talk about our favorites and least favorites, please, of Mr. Ratchet and Clank Size Matters. Which, I'll be honest, we didn't even get to the Size Matters portion of the game when we played through this.
Yeah.
You don't even know what the Size Matters portion is. There's a shrink ray.
Also, there's Big Clank.
Clank gets big, and Ratchet shrinks down and goes inside Clank at one point during the story.
That's crazy.
That's the whole premise of the game, is like, there's shrinking and bigifying.
It explains why size matters.
Yeah, if you play the game at the end, maybe Ratchet probably says at the end, like, wow, I guess, Clank, we really learned that today size matters.
That'd be awful, but totally on par.
And then Clank would go,
that Scooby-Doo laugh coming back. Look, it's a Ratchet and Clank game. You can't beat it. You can't fight it.
Hacking, shooting. There's one name. There's two names in the game, and it's Ratchet and Clank.
You pop it in, and you already know what you're getting yourself into.
Yep.
No questions. No like crazy ideas that are gonna throw you for a loop. It's Ratchet and Clank. I love the series. You probably love the series. I know, Josh, you love the series.
Yeah.
I really can't give too much more on like why it's good. Like if you played a Ratchet and Clank game, you know why this game is good.
It's good because it's a Ratchet and Clank game, and Ratchet and Clank games are good. It's been established in the video game canon that they're good. So
here's the thing. It's a PS2 game, honestly. It's a PS2 game, honestly, that's on the PSP. You can tell that when they were making this game, they were like making it for a PS2, and they're like, oh wait, hold up, guys. This is for a PSP. And that's just kind of rough.
Yep.
Like you go from a game that was honestly meant for 2 analog sticks to just one. And
not a good one. Also, it is not a great control stick.
There were many improvements to be made in that reach. But I mean, we talked about how it was a port for the PS2, but it kind of honestly feels backwards than that. It feels like it was a port to the PSP, in my opinion.
In some ways it was, right?
At least the way they built it feels like that.
Taking an established franchise and putting something that feels pretty much exactly the same on the console.
It's just like, how do you not make it feel like that from like how big Ratchet and Clank is and still honestly is today?
That's the thing. It's in some ways I know it's like, yeah, it's rough, but also if they had made the gameplay any different than standard Ratchet and Clank, we would have been like, this game sucks.
Yeah, that's so true. I can't dog on it. It's good. It's a good game.
Yeah, it's fine. It's Ratchet and Clank. It's fine. I wrote here that this game was kind of built to just kind of showcase the power of the PSP. It's going to be a lot of people's first PSP games. Like I said, sold it with bundled systems, stuff like that. So this was kind of their thesis statement for the PSP, saying like, hey, what if you could take a fully fledged PS2 game on the go with you, just straight up, right? This was kind of their like, if you're going to have a launch title, you need to make sure it is something that people are either going to remember or it's going to show people the power of the hardware that it's running on, right?
And obviously it's something that people remember from you quoting it for 20 years after.
Yeah. And that was kind of the thing was like, we're not going to put kiddie games on here like the DS, right? It's not going to be all your Pokemons and your Marios and your Yippies and your Yahoos. We're going to have games with guns where you shoot people and fight them and kill them and make tough choices. And, there are morally gray areas. And Ratchet and Clank, I would not consider a game where there are these morally gray choices. And it's like...
That's more Killzone.
Right, yeah. Ratchet and Clank is not like a adult game, right? In some ways. But this was definitely this was kind of their thesis to be like, this is what we can do on the PSP. We're putting a bunch of enemies on the screen. You have a gun. There's moving levels. The levels are big.
It's kind of crazy how many like enemies they could fit on screen at once.
Well, you're fighting like 20 enemies at some point.
Yeah, it's crazy.
They're putting on this track that takes you through the whole big level. It's pretty wild. We didn't even get to. There's like space combat. There's hoverboard races. It's just straight Ratchet and Clank. Like no ifs, ands, or buts about it. But yeah, definitely what was my least favorite was, I think for a while they were definitely getting used to, and this maybe isn't a control issue with the game, but it's kind of a control issue just with the PSP in some ways, but like moving on the stick or, just switching weapons, it definitely takes some getting used to.
Camera controls are hard at
first. The camera kind of freaks out sometimes. Obviously with no right stick, you can't just readjust the camera. I think it was like tap the right shoulder button twice to center the camera or something.
It's L and R together.
Yeah, you had to do some funky stuff to fix the camera. But yeah, that was definitely probably my least favorite, just taking some getting used to. But let's talk about why it deserves to be on the backlog, huh?
It's Ratchet and Clank, that's why.
Why should I bust it out? Why should I bust out my PSP for this bad boy? Well, size matters was Sony's main big franchise to come to the PSP, putting Ratchet and Clank on there. And clearly a lot of time was spent on making it run well. We'd recommend this one on the PSP to play an often forgotten title in the Ratchet and Clank canon.
Yeah, it's a good game.
It's a good game. It's going to be standard Ratchet and Clank stuff.
You're not going to leave this game going, man, that sucks. You're going to be like, that was good. I like that.
Some bad guy's gonna threaten galactic dominance. You're gonna stop him. Clank's gonna get big and punch stuff. Ratchet's gonna get small. role reversal. It's going to be like a whole thing, so.
Good stuff.
Quark's going to be there. He's going to be like, oh, I hope I can go on your adventure.
There are days I dream of just putting Quark in a little shuttle and shooting it off into space, going, pow.
All right, real Dr. Nefarious vibes over here, man. This guy's going to murder Quark once and for all.
He gets to just go off somewhere far away from me.
Quark's Big Adventure.
Quark's Big Adventure.
That wasn't a game, but it should be. Captain Quark exclusive game.
Just imagine it's my idea of like they shoot him off in a little rocket, he's just floating in space, and the entire game is just you listening to him talk about stuff. Oh, that'd be hilarious.
That'd be pretty good. Can we get let's do a Quark podcast? I think that would be good. All right, I'm gonna call my new best friend Ratchet and Clank. Hello, you have reached Clank's voicemail. Please. Oh, well, I guess I'll leave the third voicemail of the day. Hey, Clank, it's your buddy, Captain Quark. Just saying, I think there's a real... If any Insomniac devs are out there listening, hit me up.
There's opportunities.
I have great ideas for the future of your franchise. Leave that Spider-Man, leave all that Marvel-branded stuff in the past, man. Get back to the roots of what makes you Insomniac, Ratchet and Clank, man.
Yeah, money doesn't matter here. Even
money doesn't matter, man.
Marvel Spider-Man brought in, more money than
Here's the thing.
I think
release Marvel Spider-Man 2, release Marvel's Wolverine, and then with all the money you're going to make, just dump it all into the next Ratchet and Clank game.
Yeah.
Remaster all the old ones. I want the full collection on PS5, man.
That'd be sweet.
That freaking would be sweet. It'd be so good.
People always complain, they're just re-releasing old games.
Sometimes,
I would love for them to re-release this.
Here's the thing, though. Sometimes re-releasing old games is fine if they're good games in the first place.
If they're masterpieces for their era, yeah, it's pretty good.
Well, I think that's going to be it for episode 1 of UMDecember. Yeah, a lot of these episodes are going to be a little bit shorter.
Some might be longer.
But yeah, for UMDecember, we want to keep it kind of light and sweet to end out the year here. So probably
holidays are coming up. You don't got a lot of time to sit down and always listen to people talking.
Yeah, PSP games are short, so will our episodes be. But yeah, thank you so much for listening. Alex, why don't you take us home here?
Please comment, subscribe. Outro music's blasting in the background at this moment in time. You know, we're talking about we're planning big stuff for next year. You're droning out by this point. I'm still excited because it's going bigger and bigger. And anyways, this has been the Quick Save Podcast. Thanks for listening. Please subscribe, share with your friends, throw a like our way. We appreciate it all.
Hey man, ding that bell, brother.
Ding that bell! Anyways, thanks for listening. I'm Alex.
I'm Josh.
And this has been UMDecember Quick Save Podcast.
Good night.
within range of a space station.
Well, we were, sir. How was I to know it would suddenly explode?
Oh, Janice. It's been so long. Too long. Say you'll never leave me again for that nasty villain, Engelbert.
Oh, you make me feel like a young boy again.
Say what?
This is the after credits scene for Ratchet Deadlocked.
Oh my god.
Yeah, so it's like after Up Your Arsenal. So it's like Nefarious and Lawrence are on a meteor heading towards the space station where you're doing all the games and stuff, but then you blow it up, right? So then they roll through. The end.
Goodbye.